We're going to look at the 3 different types of muscle tissue, and then we'll look at nervous tissue. Muscle tissue makes movement possible. We have 3 different types of muscle. Skeletal muscle. This is the type of muscle that you would ordinarily think of when someone says muscles. Our mind just typically jumps to skeletal muscle, like your biceps and your chest muscles, the so-called pecs, quads, that kind of thing. Cardiac muscle is heart muscle, and smooth muscle, the hollow organs and tubes, the alimentary canal, your digestive system, all that inside of us, those are smooth muscle. Muscle's function overall is contraction and movement, helps us move. Okay, here's what skeletal muscle looks like. Know that skeletal muscle is striated. You can see these striations. And its function is movement, and it is attached to bone, to our skeletal system. Cardiac muscle also has a striated look. It's a little different, obviously, than the skeletal muscle, but still it has some striations to it. And its job is to pump blood throughout our system. So the heart is a pump, so there is movement, heart contraction, cardiac muscle contraction. And notice this word here, involuntary control. That means our autonomic nervous system is doing the work for you. It's not something that you think about doing. It does it for you. Involuntary, autonomic. You don't just sit there and tell your heart to beat consciously. You don't necessarily breathe consciously, and when you eat food, it's not like you sit there and make the food digest. Your body just does it for you. That is considered involuntary. The skeletal muscle is considered voluntary, which means we can choose to move these muscles if we want to, and choose not to move them. So that would be considered voluntary control. Smooth muscle forces things through the tubes, whether it's food or fluid or whatever. So forces things through our tubes in our body. It is also under involuntary control or autonomic control. And here's what it looks like with an animation and under a microscope. Largely found in our gastrointestinal system, but for the most part it's really any tube found inside of us is going to be smooth muscle. Nervous tissue, its function is to control everything. Really it's brain, spinal cord, and the nerves that go with it. Their job is to control everything. Mass form of communication from brain to body and body to brain. Okay, that's afferent and efferent communication. We'll talk about afferents and efferents later. It transmits electrical information in the form of an action potential. So there is, you could say, electricity. And these neurotransmitters that are released from the axon terminals go across synaptic cleft and hit other tissue, tells tissue what to do. Whether it's contract the heart, digest food, anything we do is a nervous system function, and that has to do with the transmission of electrical information. Okay, nervous system does form the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves associated with that. It's responsible for coordinating and controlling the body and its functions. It's responsible for the voluntary and involuntary control. It's responsible for our thoughts, emotions, reasoning, skill, memory. And many of these functions depend on the ability of nerve tissue to communicate to our cells, one cell to another, through electrical signals. Now later when we get into the nervous system, I'm going to dive in deeper on structure and function, how all this works, and also how to take care of your brain, spinal cord, and nervous system. Now I'm a big fan of trying to have a healthy and balanced diet and lifestyle, minimize stress, and then there's things that you can do to your brain and for your brain to nourish it, to protect it, which in the long run will help you decrease your chances of dementia and other brain problems as you get older. So we'll dive into all that once we get to the nervous system lecture. Okay, the nerve tissue consists of a neuron, also known as a nerve cell. Okay, so you're seeing that over here. And it's responsible for the conduction of the action potential. And the three main parts are the cell body, which you're seeing basically there, all that cell body. The dendrites, which are these branch-like structures. And the neuroglia. Now, neuroglia, its translation is nerve glue, so there's a lot of neuroglias that are accompanied within the nervous system. And we'll get to specific neuroglias later when we get to nervous system. But for right now, those three parts, cell body, dendrite, and neuroglia. Okay, the cell body contains the nucleus. That's shorthand there for nucleus. The dendrites, those branch-like structures, they allow the electrical signal to be conducted toward the middle of the cell body. So electrical information comes toward the cell body via the dendrites. Okay, and then we have the axon itself, and then the myelin that wraps around the axon.